Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. Thanking every one of you who are going to work today, especially our frontline nurses, doctors, lab techs, hospital staff, cleaning people, food service people, all the truckers who are on the road, all the grocery store workers who are working, everyone at a CVS and a Walgreens and everywhere around is running a test center. Thank you all. Kind of a bracing number to see this morning on Tuesday, April 28th in the year of the plague 2020. We have 1 million cases of the virus in the United States as of this morning. And I remember in January when I began to warn you about this, and yeah, I was first to the bell. There were others, but in broadcast, I'm pretty sure from January 20th on, I'm first to the bell telling you this was bad. I didn't think it would become 1 million cases, nor did I think that 56,634 Americans would die, nor that there are 3 million confirmed cases worldwide, and it's much higher because China and Iran lies. Remember, it's the Chinese Communist Party, stupid, the sign in my studio. More than 211,000 people have died worldwide. It's much higher than that. You look at the pictures in Ecuador and Brazil, we don't know what's going on in the world because we have no way of knowing what's going on in the world. It's a killer disease, especially for old people. All right, if you're over 70, and that's the classification they're now using in Great Britain more than anything else. If you're over 70, it's a real killer disease, and there are some mysterious side effects for younger people who get it, and then there are some people who just walk away and like having the flu. And so I just grieve with those who grieve and hope with those who hope. Yesterday, the president was in the East Room. Let's begin with the president in the East Room yesterday, cut number 6.
The United States now holds a world record for testing, and by a lot. We've conducted more than 5.4 million tests, more than any other country anywhere in the world, and we're actually growing it very rapidly. You probably heard those numbers just came out. After encouraging governors for several weeks to leverage unused testing capacity in their states, last week we provided contact information for specific labs where they could find additional testing and capacity. Within 48 hours, the number of tests performed across the country began to skyrocket. Early in April, the United States averaged approximately 150,000 tests per day. That's up very, very substantially from a couple of weeks before. And the 150,000 a day has gone to way over 200,000 tests per day since Wednesday. This includes a 122% testing increase in Michigan, 124% increase in Maryland, and many other locations are right in that vicinity, and some are a little bit higher than that. To provide further guidance and support to the states, today we're releasing our blueprint for state testing plans and rapid response programs. Together, we're accelerating testing for Americans at retail locations across the country, and especially in our African American and Hispanic communities. We're going very, very strong in those communities. There are currently 73 retail sites, testing sites in 25 states in those specific areas, and we're increasing it very substantially. A lot of progress has been made for African American testing, Hispanic American testing, and Asian American testing.
He went then to a presser in the afternoon. Again, these are more ambushes than interviews. They are not really it's like half of the White House press corps is the Biden advance team. Half of them are pros like Steve Holland of Reuters, and then half are just advance team from Team Biden. And he took a number of questions. He made a statement. Cut number 8, Donald Trump at the afternoon briefing.
As you know, for several weeks, my administration has encouraged the governors to leverage unused testing capacity in states. Very few understood that we have tremendous capacity. Then 1 week ago, we provided each governor with a list of names, addresses, and phone numbers of the labs where they could find additional testing capacity in their states. Within 48 hours, the number of tests performed across the country began to absolutely skyrocket. On Saturday alone, more than 200,000 test results were reported, which is a gigantic number, bigger than any country anywhere in the world for a much longer period of time.
So we're scaling rapidly. That's good news. But China is doing some China nasty stuff. First of all, Fox News earlier in the day, Peter Navarro, the White House advisor on trade, dropped this bombshell, cut number 7.
One of the things that's on my radar, though, that's really troublesome is there's a lot of these antibody tests coming in from China now that are low quality, false readings and things like that, and we've got to be really careful. So those are the kinds of things I'm watching, Brian, as we try to ramp up our medical supply chain to meet all the needs we need.
So what does President Trump think about the People's Republic of China, more specifically the Chinese Communist Party, cut number 9?
There are a lot of ways you can hold them accountable. We're doing very serious investigations, as you probably know, and we are not happy with China. We are not happy with that whole situation because we believe it could have been stopped at the source. It could have been stopped quickly, and it wouldn't have spread all over the world, and we think that should have happened. So we'll let you know at the appropriate time, but we are doing serious investigations.
He got asked, how are we going to open the economy? Are we going to go slower or faster? Cut number 10.
We're doing everything in our power to heal the sick and to gradually reopen our nation and to safely get our people back to work. They want to get back to work, and they want to get back to work soon. There's a hunger for getting our country back, and it's happening faster than people would think. Ensuring the health of our economy is vital to ensuring the health of our nation. These goals work in tandem. They work side by side. It's clear that our aggressive strategy to slow the spread has been working and is saving countless lives.
Then the president said, what's going to happen to the economy? Cut number 11.
So people have stepped up to the plate. I think we're going to have a really good, I think it's going to start building. I think it's going to build fast. I think it'll be a tremendous, tremendous comeback. And, so I say I built the greatest economy with all of the people that helped me and all of the people in this country. We built the greatest economy the world has ever seen, and we're going to do it again.
Okay, so the press is there. The, quote, press, close quote. It's the Joe Biden advance team, half of them, 3/4 of them maybe. Olivia Nuzzi, who is a White House correspondent with New York Magazine, hit a new low. Cut number 12.
If an American president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
So, yeah, we've lost a lot of people, but if you look at what original projections were, 2.2 million, we're probably heading to 60,000, 70,000. It's far too many. One person is too many for this. And I think we've made a lot of really good decisions. The big decision was closing the border or doing the ban. People coming in from China, obviously, other than American citizens, which had to come in. Can't say you can't come in, you can't come back to your country. I think we've made a lot of good decisions. I think that Mike Pence and the task force have done a fantastic job. I think that everybody working on the ventilators, you see what we've done there, have done unbelievable. The press doesn't talk about ventilators anymore. They just don't want to talk about them, and that's okay. But the reason they don't want to talk, that was a subject that nobody would get off of. They don't want to talk about them. We're in the same position on testing. We are lapping the world on testing, and the world is coming to us. As I said, they're coming to us saying, what are you doing? How do you do it? And we're helping them. So, no, I think we've done a great job. And one person, I will say this, one person is too many. Thank you all very much.
Now, Olivia, go back and just play the beginning, the question. Just play the question, cut number 12.
If an American president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
Stop right there. You realize that's a stupid, inane question. Its premise, if an American president loses, in other words, a causal, approximate cause between the actions of Donald Trump instead of the People's Republic of China. That is buying into the People's Republic of China, Communist Chinese Party's line. It's outrageous. That is emblematic. By the way, she's not unusual. She's not particularly gifted, not particularly well known. She is typical of more than half of the people. It's like walking into an ambush every night. I don't know why he does it. Stay tuned, America. I'm coming right back. I'll give you an economic look at what's going on around the world markets when we return to this Tuesday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. 60s were pretty simple in comparison to this, the age of the virus. For those of us who grew up in the 60s, it just seems like a nice hazy memory, even though there was a Vietnam War that claimed 50,000 lives. Now there's a virus that's claimed 50,000 lives. America blundered into the Vietnam War. The People's Republic of China negligently exported the virus thanks to the indifference of the Communist Chinese Party. I'll be talking about that with Rick Scott, Steve, and with Senator Tom Cotton later in the show. Let me do a check of markets brought to you by Birch Gold Group. The WHO just issued a warning, and I don't really trust the WHO, but they issued a warning that if a vaccine isn't found for COVID, social distancing will extend into 2022. That's herd immunity by survival of the fittest and people getting it and living and other people dying. That's a nasty, nasty prediction. Maybe we'll get that vaccine. I'll take it. You anti-vaxxers out there, I am permanently banning you from my timeline on Twitter. If this vaccine comes, you're trying to kill me. You're trying to kill everyone over 60. And you're trying to give strokes to people in their 40s and 50s. And some days it will mutate and go after children. So you anti-vaxxers, don't bother calling me. But I will tell you, Birch Gold, if it gets ugly, if we do not have the breakthrough, Birch Gold will have been the one call you wish you had made, or the one text you wish you would have texted. You text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747 for free information on diversifying your portfolio, whether in your retirement accounts or buying physical gold. You can go to hughgold.com. Banks are tightening lending requirements for purchases. What happens if construction stalls out? Again, if the economy goes into the kind of depression we're expected, at least for a quarter, it's not a recession. It doesn't have a name for it, what we're going through. It's a contraction it's a shuttering of the economy. Gold is at 1723 right now, near its highs. And I originally started telling you to buy it at 1,400. I've seen it way above 2,000 before, and I would not be surprised to see it go there. But it never has the bottom fall out. That's why you should have 10%, 20% of your income, your savings, in precious metals. And I believe in Birch Gold because they actually store the metals. It's not an exchange-traded fund. It's not a spider. It's none of one of those things. It's the real deal. The value in Krugerrands or American Eagles. You talk to them, you can text my name, Hugh, to 474747. Overnight, Japan gave up a little bit, like 0.06%, so it didn't really go down. And everywhere else is up. Hong Kong is up 1.25%. England is open. Germany is open. Respectively, 1.5% rise, 1.73%. Yesterday, the Dow went up 358 points. The NASDAQ went up 95. The S&P went up 41. I always tell you Amazon, it wasn't a good day for Amazon yesterday. I always tell you that when it happens because people are taking some profits prior to their reporting Thursday after the bell. And so I think it fell $35 or something like that. And let me pull it up. It's up $15 before the market opens. Who knows what it'll do in the course of the day. But yesterday, on Monday, it fell $34.22. It's trading in the $2,300 to $2,400 range. Price targets are now up at $2,900 because everyone is changing their consumption patterns. I am hoping that the economy is going to recover, but don't forget, you need to be diversified into Birch Gold. Go to hughgold.com or text Hugh to 474747. Don't wait another day. What are you doing all day? I mean, you should not be watching more than 3 hours of TV. Even on the days that I binge, all right, I watch Fauda, which is the Israeli show on the Shin Bet. I watch Le Bureau, which is about the DGSE. Great shows, right? One's Israeli, one's French. And then I watch the Viking show, The Last Kingdom, because I got a new season out. So even on the days I binge, I watch 3 hours, or I watch a movie, or I watch President Trump's presser. But don't be just sitting in. Get out there and move around. I'll tell you more about that when we come back. More to cover. A secret group of scientists and billionaires pushing a Manhattan Project for COVID-19. This reads like a press release for the Vane. Really, there are millions of people working on this, but I'll tell you about this when I come back. Don't go anywhere, America. You're listening to The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Yesterday in the Rose Garden, a 27-year-old, quote, journalist, close quote, who never graduated from college, signed up for the Anthony Weiner mayoral campaign, attended Fordham for a while, but did not graduate. She's 27 years old. Olivia Nuzzi. Now, I have never heard of Olivia Nuzzi until yesterday. Never. Not once. She works for a marginal outlet, New York Magazine. It's a lefty rag. And, I mean, they got nice listings on what's on Broadway, et cetera, but that's about it. And never heard of her. Never heard of her. Don't know a thing about her. I know she's 27 years old. Ben, how old are you? How old's Ben? He's 27, all right? So I've got nothing against 27-year-olds in media. Do you ever hear Ben talk on the radio? Once every 4 years, we let him say something. He's been working for me for 4 years. He has exactly the same credentials as Olivia Nuzzi. But they let Olivia Nuzzi into the White House yesterday, into the press briefing of the task force. And here is what she said. Cut number 12.
If an American president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
Now, I've been thinking about this all night. This is if the Chinese Communist Party could invent a question to be asked to divide the country and divert attention, this would be it. Now, Olivia Nuzzi is welcome to come on this show, and I will treat her with great respect and courtesy as I do all my guests. I am quite sure she doesn't know anything about the Vietnam War, except a body count. I am quite sure she has no idea of what proximate cause is, because that would require you to graduate from college and go to law school and understand tort and responsibility. I have no idea other than she is a left-wing hack, and her talking point, which has gotten wide play everywhere, plays right into the agenda of the Chinese Communist Party. That does not make her a communist. For the benefit of Emo at Media Matters, who's writing down, scribbling furiously, Hewitt attacks Nuzzi or something like that. I'm not attacking her. I'm pointing out it's an ignorant question. It's an ignorant question. That doesn't mean she's stupid. A lot of ignorant questions and answers are not the result of stupidity, but of ignorance. They're different. Stupidity means you can't learn. Ignorance means you haven't. And so she's learned nothing about proximate cause or causation. She's there to attack the president and get a rise out of him to get clicks. I don't understand. I have not been asked, nor is it my job to advise the President of the United States or the comms team. I would not do these anymore. They are ambushes. Wyatt Earp couldn't shoot himself out of this many OK Corrals. All right? He could have every huckleberry out there for every person engaged in the gunfight, and it would not matter. It's just a gunfight without bullets. And he could have the wildest right-wingers on his side. It would not matter. You cannot win this. This is not an interview. This is an ambush. This is not a press conference. This is an ambush. This has got nothing to do with you and me in the crisis of the country. Got nothing to do with your parents and your grandparents or your children or your spouse. It's got nothing to do with the world as it is. All it does is turn attention from the fact that the Chinese Communist Party did this to the world. And Trump derangement syndrome is deep in this one. Do you remember when Dianne Feinstein attacked unconstitutionally, because there are no religious tests permitted in the United States Constitution, a nominee for the federal bench who was a Roman Catholic? And Senator Feinstein said the doctrine is deep within this one, like a Star Wars-esque kind of thing to say. Well, the TDS is deep in Olivia Nuzzi. By the way, the Nuzzi family, big Niles, Ohio family. Father Paul, I went to high school with. There are Nuzzis everywhere. Hey, Paul became a pharmacist. His brother became the priest. Went to Notre Dame, became a priest. I get it wrong sometimes. Look, high school was a long time ago for me. But Nuzzi, great family. I look at this, I say, I hope she's not related to the Nuzzis of Ohio. They were great, hardworking, wonderful Catholic family that understood what it meant to sacrifice and pitch in and support. And all this, I mean, really. What do you think about this? 1-800-520-1234. Can we play her question again?
If an American president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
Okay, so my question, does it matter that she's not a college graduate? Does it matter that it's a stupid question? An ignorant question? I don't know if she's stupid or not. I've never talked to her. I don't know if she reads books. I haven't read things that she's written. She works for an obscure magazine. She's the, much admired online by the lefties. She lives in the Twitterverse, and the Twitterverse is all favor. Oh, that's Olivia Nuzzi doing Olivia Nuzzi stuff. And so I'm talking about Olivia Nuzzi, so I'm rewarding that, which gets rewarded, gets repeated. And tomorrow she'll ask if the president is somehow responsible for the rise in heart disease, and beyond that, the collapse of states that have got pension funds that are out of control. I mean, you can blame him for whatever you want. Mr. President, fentanyl is sweeping through the country. We had 50,000 deaths last year. That killed more. Aren't you responsible for that? You're the president of the United States. I wouldn't uncredential anyone. If you're going to do it, the American First Amendment protects everybody, the White House Press Association, but I just wouldn't do these. The president is the best interview in America. I'd let her interview him. I really would. I would invite Olivia Nuzzi into the Oval with C-SPAN and say, have at me. Let's have a conversation. That's what I would do. I would not let the one-off hand grenades come flying. Remember when George W. Bush was in Georgia? I think he was in Georgia and someone threw a hand grenade on the stage. That was a bad day for the Secret Service. Someone got close. It didn't go off, thank God. But, I mean, these are just rhetorical hand grenades. Brian in Virginia. What do you think, Brian? Hey, Brian.
Hey, yeah, I was just trying to say, since she's wanting to blame the death count for the corona on Trump and his administration, wouldn't that disqualify Biden from running since the H1N1 was during his administration and there were so many deaths?
Yeah, I mean, it's just stupid. It's just stupid. The United States has done amazing things, and it's a Chinese Communist Party talking point to blame the president. Anything that diverts attention from the CCP and puts blame on anybody else, is a Chinese Communist Party talking point. Thank you, Brian. Steve in North Carolina. What do you say, Steve?
North Dakota.
North Dakota. Oh, wow. You're up early. How are you, buddy?
Oh, pretty good. Well, she said let. That kind of bothered me. He didn't let anything happen. He has been fighting it from the beginning. So that's one thing. But the thing that's been bothering me for a week and a half, 2 weeks now, I have been trying to find the total deaths in the United States per day compared to the last 4 years. You can't find it anywhere. It's not there.
Well, we've got, I don't want to encourage you to find that, because the reality is those deaths are underway anyway, and what we know is that we have 56,000 new deaths in a new category. It may be slightly overstated. There is some controversy about that, but I'm going with 56,000. It is, without question, a pandemic, and it's killing people, and it's got its own set of symptoms, and it's deadly, and it's complex. It's got nothing to do with the president and everything to do with the Communist Chinese Party. Thank you, my friend. From North Dakota, let's go way up to Alaska. Heck, we go from Virginia to North Dakota to Alaska. Alaska, Zach. Hello, Zach. How are you?
Hugh Hewitt, great to hear you. Yes, you're awesome to hear every morning.
What are you doing up this early, buddy? What time is it in Alaska? I have no idea. You might be like in Japan's time zone. I don't know.
It's 4 hours. It's 2 something.
Oh, what are you doing? You been drinking all night and shooting moose or something?
I wish. No, I'm on my fishing boat. I'm a lifelong Alaska commercial salmon fisherman, crab fisherman.
Have you been in that that we used to have on one of the variety channels where they'd go out with the fishing boats? What was that called?
Deadliest Catch. I got a bunch of friends on the Deadliest Catch.
Deadliest Catch, that's it.
In the Bering Sea. I used to crab in the Bering Sea for 15 years.
How old are you?
I'm 49. I started salmon fishing when I was 10.
Holy smokes, you want to come take Dwayne's job? I'll get some stuff done around here. You're a hard worker.
Yeah, no, and well, with this quarantine, I've been on a boat, and we haven't been able to go fishing since February. So
Wait, why? Why can't you go on the Bering
thousands
Sea and
of
get
guys,
crabs?
Because well, they've been doing that in Dutch Harbor, but us in the Central Gulf area, the canneries, the seafood processors aren't open. Or, they're not buying fish or crab or anything right now.
Oh, my gosh. So, anyway, you're up there working your butt off on a salmon boat. It's got to be cold and dark. What do you think of Olivia Nuzzi sitting in the White House press corps at the age of 28 or 29?
Preposterous. I don't even know what. I don't know. I don't understand some of the yahoos they let in there, much less. I agree with you on. If the president, would, just hold off on these daily conference calls, because it's a daily onslaught. And
so Zach, this is the call of the year. 30 years you've been fishing off of Alaska, breaking your back, and a 29-year-old journalist accuses the president of being responsible for the COVID virus and compares it to Vietnam. What is your response?
It's absolutely horrendous, unacceptable.
And what do you think of American, quote, journalism, close quote? I mean, again, you're in the middle of the sea listening to this stuff. What is your first reaction when you hear that question?
It's a big guffaw. I'm like, what? It's, because we listen to the news, we get XM radio and whatnot. And just the rhetoric from the left. I mean, because all the big newspapers and all the shows, they're all intertwined with Soros, and everybody's married to this person, that person, related here, related there, and it's just one big leftist kind of onslaught.
I call it the narrative, and you're right. Now, Zach, I have a question. Can I send Dwayne to you? Will you take him out on your boat?
Sure.
All right, so hang on and make sure we get your phone number.
Yeah, one of these days, anybody, any one of your crew can come up here any day.
Can you keep him for a few months?
You can set him up. It'd be an adventure.
Okay, Ben, get his number. Get Zach's number. I got a plan for Dwayne. Thank you, Zach. Oh, that is a plan. Dwayne, I'll send you with the Relief Factor. No. I'm going to send you to Alaska. Going to Alaska. If I had a producer, that's what I'd be bumping out with.
You mean north to Alaska?
North to Alaska, yeah. If I had
Johnny
a producer,
Horton?
I got my Relief Factor. In fact, I'll do the Relief Factor when I come back. But can you come up with that right now? Because that's what Dwayne's doing. He's going with Zach. Did we lose Zach? ReliefFactor.com. Taking this because I'm going to have to run away from Dwayne after this. All right, there it is, my 4 pills. Stone cold coffee, but I need my ReliefFactor.com every morning. Because I got to run away from the White House press corps after this. Don't go anywhere, America. Drucker is next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
Welcome back, America. That music means on the Hugh Hewitt Show inside the Beltway in the ReliefFactor.com studio. I am joined by David Drucker. He is of the Washington Examiner. Follow him at David M. Drucker on Twitter. Good morning, David.
Hey, good morning.
Until last night, I had never heard of nor read anything by Olivia Nuzzi. Literally had never heard her name before. Do you know her?
Not personally, but I know of her.
What do you know of her?
I mean, you know, I know about as much about her as I know about a lot of my colleagues in the press. I mean, I've read some of her work. I haven't read all of it. It's, you know, I mean, I spend most of my day on deadline churning out my own work. So it's especially these days. Well, I've got my kids chirping in the background in what is a sort of romper room homeschool I'm trying to run here. I don't have that much time to pay attention to too much, except for about an hour at night and an hour in the morning before I get going.
Okay, my cursory look. I don't know anything about her. She'd be welcome to come on the show. She'll be treated with courtesy. She's 29 years old. She grew up in New York. She did not graduate from Fordham College, which she attended briefly, but left for the Anthony Weiner campaign. And yesterday's question is the first I've heard her ask, so maybe she's been there for a long time. It is inane. It is an ignorant question, as it lacks any grasp of the Vietnam War or even any remote consideration of the basics of proximate cause or just general causation. How do people get credentialed by the White House Correspondents Association so that they can have a chair at these briefings, David Drucker?
I'm not sure, but you don't have to be credentialed by the White House, by the association, to report at the White House. I mean, look, I don't know if she has what we call a hard pass or not. I know that for instance, if the White House is your beat, you have a hard pass. So you've submitted all your information. You go in and out at will as long as you have that pass. Last year, I had to go to the White House for an interview. I had to submit information so that they would allow me in, but you can get in. Now, without that hard pass, I'm a campaign reporter. I'm not a member of the White House Press Corps officially, but it doesn't mean you can't get in. Sometimes.
So I just had
people in.
I just had a salmon fisherman from off the coast of Alaska at 2:45 in the morning call me to just express astonishment and dismay that she would pose such a question. It's genuinely disconnected from reality, David. And I understand that half of the people or more in that group are nothing other than extensions of the Biden campaign. But is there not a limit at which journalism polices itself and condemns as clearly provocative and without a basis and simply asked for the purposes of provoking the president to anger, which he didn't do? He didn't get angry, he just answered the question. Isn't there some job for journalism to say, and particularly journalists of the left to say, that's a ridiculous question and a waste of the country's time, which is precious and urgent at this moment?
I mean, usually when we police ourselves, it's when somebody has lied or made things up. Beyond that, there's wide latitude given. There tends to be a philosophy of wide latitude, even if there's quiet disdain. And I have no idea. I wasn't aware of the question was asked because I was taken up with other things last night. So I don't know what the reaction is or might be. But usually when we start to police ourselves, it's because somebody has made up sources and created fiction.
Well, I'll tell you, that is obvious, but I think this just sets a new bottom. It just demonstrated to the world it's not a press corps. It's a gang of political activists into who a few journalists fall, like Steve Holland, and that I think the president is nuts to do this. I think it's an ambush every day, David. And you're a campaign reporter. He's very good at interviews. No one, Wyatt Earp couldn't survive this many ambushes. It's nuts for him to do this. Your comment.
Well, look, I mean, I think on several levels it's not as politically advantageous, but I think that he thinks it is. I think he'll probably look at it. I would not be surprised if he has reviewed the clip of yesterday, and as angry as you are, he's just as pleased.
I'm not angry. I am disgusted. I'm dismayed that my craft.
My point is, I think he might look at it politically, whether he's right or wrong, as mission accomplished.
Well, he might,
And
because it certainly does define the press as operatives. I mean, I hadn't thought of that. You're right. He might look at that and say, mission accomplished. Everybody knows the White House press corps is a bunch of hack lefties representing Joe Biden and AOC.
I think that this is the kind of back and forth that he enjoys, and I think that he's always found it politically advantageous. I think that that's why sometimes when, you don't see this level of questioning, sometimes he looks to provoke this level of interplay. I just think that he needs to have a foil, and for the purposes of motivating his political base for reasons that are often legitimate, he needs the press on the opposite side of him.
I think he's running against the press. I think he's running against Washington, Manhattan, Beltway media elites, not Joe Biden, who, by the way, was invisible for another day. David M. Drucker on Twitter from the Washington Examiner. Thank you. Stay with me, America. 2 senators, the Secretary of Energy, Byron York, all ahead here on hours 2 and 3 of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to the 400 affiliates of the Hugh Hewitt Show. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll notice much higher speeds. We retooled all the inner tubes yesterday. I was working late last night getting this stuff organized, so you should appreciate how this is just flowing out to you in like record speed, and we're posting up stuff at YouTube. Thank you, actually, to the team in the California production studio. Joined now by Byron York of the Washington Examiner and Fox News. Good morning, Byron.
Good morning, Hugh.
I do not know, nor had I ever heard the name Olivia Nuzzi until last night. I didn't even know there was a briefing last night. I was watching Fauda, and all of a sudden my Twitter feed explodes with Olivia this and Olivia that, so I track it down. Let me play the exchange for you in the audience. Cut number, whatever it is.
American president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War. Does he deserve to be reelected?
What do you think of that, Byron York?
Well, Olivia Nuzzi is a reporter. She and her friend Ryan Lizza are writing a book about the 2020 campaign. They were both at the news conference yesterday. And, it sounded to me like the kind of zinger line that you would have prepare for a debate, a political line. More people died from coronavirus than from the Vietnam War. I mean, the suggestion, of course, is that they died unnecessarily and they would not have died if someone else were president. I mean, it kind of ignores the experience across the globe of the European countries in particular. I mean, look at all of them: France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, even Germany, UK. Have all had a terrible time with all of this. And so it was a complete gotcha question. What can you say? It was designed to get exactly the reaction that you got, which is you got a bunch of, texts about it. Hey, watch this, watch this, watch this.
Now, how do you pronounce her name? Because I went to school with Nuzzi's. It's very Italian.
I think it's Nuzzi. I don't know. I've always thought it was Nuzzi, but
I went to school with a bunch of Nuzzi's from Niles, Ohio. One of whom went to Notre Dame, became a priest, and I was a pharmacist. Good people. I'm just a classic Midwestern Catholic family. I look at this and I say to myself, there is embedded in that question a premise of proximate cause, which would get any first-year law student flunked out of law school. I mean, it's just such an ignorant question that ignorant means not stupid, just ignorant of basic proximate cause. And then I look her up. She's 29 years old. She worked on the Anthony Weiner for Mayor campaign. She never graduated from college. I didn't know she was writing a book with Ryan, who's one of the more accomplished journalists. I don't know what happened to Ryan. His career hit some kind of a wall. I can't remember what it was. But so she's promoting a book, basically.
Well, this is a long project covering. I mean, look, a lot of people write books about a lot of stuff. I mean, and also, a lot of the questions at the White House briefing are designed to just attract attention. They're designed to be outrageous and to attract attention, and that's just the way it is. I mean, people have talked many times about not televising the White House briefing, meaning what used to be the regular White House briefing. Trump basically ended that because he personally talks to the press so much that they really don't need a spokesman briefing every day. But back when there were White House briefings, I mean, there was talk about not televising them simply because there were so many gotcha questions. So gotcha questions are just a tradition here. I mean, I actually listened to the briefing yesterday. I tuned in to see if there was going to be one because, as you know, the president had gone kind of back and forth on that yesterday. And when there was, I watched for a while. And by the way, a lot of the questions were actually factual and dealing with the issues of the day and not follow-ups on the whole disinfectant thing and this question as well.
Yeah, Byron, my take on this is the president needs to go back to one-on-one interviews. I don't care with whom. There are pros in that crowd like Steve Holland. I always hold him up from Reuters, who is always asking a fact-based question of critical importance to the audience that allows the president or one of the team to respond to the crisis we are in. And then there's the other category of people looking for, I'm ready for my close-up moment. And they are mixed together so inextricably that I don't think he should do them anymore because Wyatt Earp could not survive that many OK Corrals, right? You just couldn't, you can't win that number of encounters. Do you agree or disagree with me on that?
Well, I almost don't have an opinion because Trump is Trump. And he has, one thing that's been very striking about him, and that made Friday unusual, is that even when there's some big news story, even when there's some just big, kerfuffle going on, Trump will come out and talk to the press, and in a way in which earlier presidents used to hide. So his coming out on Friday, and it was only a 22-minute event, which is short for these things, and then not taking questions was very unusual. And
I have a suggestion for you about that. It wasn't the kerfuffle. It was the NFL draft. He actually knew his numbers would get hammered. And the NFL draft had ratings that were astonishing, double or triple what they normally are, because Americans are starved for sports. So we were watching old clips of young college players obsessively, we being the sports-consuming public. I would have turned away from the briefing. I even tweeted out, you're on the clock, Mr. President. Get out of there. You're in the way. And I actually think it was the draft.
Well, maybe it was. My guess is, looking at the audience for cable TV, and obviously Fox remains by far the big leader in cable news coverage. But everybody's ratings have gone up somewhat because there's great public interest in this.
Oh, radio's doing great.
In this.
I can't believe it. People aren't driving, and people are finding me via HughHewitt.com or YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. They're watching every minute of every show because they need information. But, Byron, I think he has turned the election into President Trump versus Manhattan Beltway media elites and the governing class, not Joe Biden, who is actually kind of hapless Joe, not sleepy Joe, not slow Joe, just hapless. And a stand-in for the anger of the left. And every time you get a question like Nutzi's, and I'll adopt your pronunciation because it's probably correct, I say to myself, he did it again. She gave him a gift, even though it's a hand grenade.
Look, that works with some quarters of his base, but that's not what the election is going to be about. I mean, the most critical thing at the moment is for the whole virus situation to get better, for the virus itself to diminish, for the numbers to go down, for there to be successful partial reopenings across the country and then larger reopenings according to the circumstances of each state and city and county. The actual facts matter here, and what's going to be important for him is for that to go well. And I think a lot of people do have the perspective. I was talking about what happened in Western Europe. A lot of people do understand that this was a global pandemic that hit the United States. It was not a Trump lied and people died situation. It was not a blood on his hands situation. They understand that, but they want things to get better. And I think that that's going to be the most important thing. So, look, it's always good for the base to knock around these reporters who come there wanting to ask gotcha questions and wanting to snark about the president. That's fine. It works for the part of his base. But don't forget the big thing, which is to make this better.
You know, Byron, I think the election of 2020 is a 5-act play. The first act was the election of 2016. The second act was the attempt to take out the president by a small group, not a deep state, but a small group of serious people. And Act 3 was the impeachment. Act 4 is the virus. And Act 5 is October. Where are we in October? Everything right now is just kind of setting up. How did he do? And I don't think what he did, other than shutting the borders, will matter. That's going to be his talking point. They're going to say you were slow on I mean, it'll be very complicated. But I think Act 5, last minute to you, Act 5 doesn't start until October. It can't, or maybe September.
Yeah. By the way, just on the immigration issue of the borders and immigration, New Washington Post poll this morning shows 65% support for the president's temporary halt on immigration. 65% support versus 34% opposition, 1% don't know. Now, October, the important thing is going to be the trajectory. If things are going up and getting better and are normalizing then that is going to help the president. I think people are going to have more perspective, and the blood on his hands argument is just not going to work. If it's still a significant problem, that's a significant problem for him.
Byron York, as usual, on the mark. No Olivia Nuzzi here. Byron is the best of the best. Thank you, Byron. I'll be right back. America, don't go anywhere. We got 2 senators and the Secretary of Energy coming up here on today's Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by patternsofevidence.com.
Welcome back, America. I was pretty young when this happened, but listen to the bass in the back here. Just saying. Welcome back. It's Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. Coming up in the next segment, Energy Secretary Brouillette joins me. There's a big deal happening. You may not know about it. There's a big deal happening with nuclear power, and we got to get some attention to it. We've been working on it for 3.5 years. The Trump administration has, and they came out with their report last week, and of course, it's being buried by the COVID news. Also have Senators Cotton and Scott coming along, talking about phase 4. Let's check out markets, shall we? Brought to you by Andrew and Todd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Zywicki, they are my friends. You can trust them. People call them from all over the country every day at 888-888-1172. There was Sierra Pacific Mortgage. But you ought to really just go to andrewandtodd.com, answer a couple of questions. They or a member of their team will be right back to you. I wanted to check with Andrew this weekend what are happening with mortgage rates because they were so low at the beginning of March before the virus hit. Then the market got scrambled eggs. I mean, nobody could get any signal. Noise was so great. People stopped lending. Andrew and Todd just kept going on and said, get your applications in. We'll lock you when it settles down. Then it settled down, and the 10-year Treasury this morning is at 0.66%. Remember when I told you in the day I'd never seen it below 2? And then, of course, the great pandemic has driven down short-term interest rates so low that the 10-year Treasury is at 0.66%. The 3-month Treasury is at 0.09%. You're not making any money on your money. And the 10-year Treasury is being lent at 0.66%. Now, your mortgage interest rate for a 15, a 20, or a 30-year refinance isn't going to be that, but they're as low as they've ever been, and they're not going to get lower. So this is it. This is the bottom. Done. Finish. It's never going to be better for you. Now, your credit will determine how much you can borrow from your house, how much you can borrow to buy a house, but it's never going to get better than this. So call andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. It will never be better than right now. What is right now? As I told you last hour, Europe seems to think things are happening. England's stock exchange is up 1.5 points. The German stock exchange is up the same. Yesterday, the Dow was up 358 points. The NASDAQ was up 95. The S&P was up 41. About the only stock that went down yesterday was Amazon, which is funny because they got earnings coming out and people are afraid it's overvalued and then they're going to be blowout earnings. I loved what Jim Cramer said about this yesterday, but it was off $34 yesterday. I'm not a prophet nor the son of the prophet. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen today, but earnings season is upon us. And the markets are beginning to figure out, except for the oil business, everything will rebound, except for the retail and oil business. Retail and oil are under, and retail includes restaurants, are under fundamental change. Now, I think restaurants will come back because people want to go out. I mean, I'm dying to go out to my little Italian restaurant. I told you the story. I just went and picked up 5 lasagna dinners and I was Santa Claus with lasagna on Saturday because I love this restaurant so much. I don't want it to go out of business. They're cooking. They're just doing curbside pickup. And went around delivering lasagna everywhere to my friends and family. And I want you to do the same for your favorite restaurant because they got to bounce back. And it's been terrible. But retail, I just don't know. I don't know if Macy's can survive. Now, the great storied exchanges, the Mall of America, South Coast Plaza, in Minnesota and Orange County, respectively, they will return. Fashion Island, the great meccas of consumerism in America, Fifth Avenue, they'll come back. I just don't know about the local mall. I really don't. I think Amazon and Target and Costco have displaced them. And home delivery is pretty doggone nice. People using Instacart and Amazon, Whole Foods. Hey, I don't know if Safeway comes back after this. I just don't. We'll see. 1-800-520-1234 connects you with andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. Did I just give out my phone number? Yeah. It's 888-888-1172. Better yet, go to andrewandtodd.com. And don't forget, if you're watching TV today, today is the time to try nosafespaces.com. Dennis Prager, Adam Carolla, No Safe Spaces. The code is SALE25. Get 25% off. Great flick. I'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Energy Secretary Dan Brouillette. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Great to have you back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Hugh. How are you doing?
I'm great. I want to talk nuclear with you, but first, energy sector oil prices are so cataclysmically impacted by the virus that it would be malpractice for me not to ask you, when do you see the basically no market for oil ending?
Well, it'll end when we turn the economy back on safely, Hugh, and that's what the president has us focused on. So we've come together as a cabinet, as a whole of government approach to provide recommendations. The president has identified a phased approach to this. We'll very shortly to execute those phases, and we'll turn the economy around pretty quickly.
All right, so I think that's the answer, which is oil is going to be oil. We need it. It'll come back whenever there's demand. But right now, I want to turn to this. I'm holding in my hand a report, Restoring America's Competitive Nuclear Energy Advantage, which you issued last week. It didn't get any attention because, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic and people aren't paying attention to this. But I want to read one line from page 11. The clear outcome of the Nuclear Working Group's efforts is confirmation that it is in the nation's national security interest to preserve the assets and investments of the entire U.S. nuclear enterprise and to revitalize the sector to regain U.S. global nuclear leadership. I've been waiting for this report for a long time. What's the immediate action that follows, Secretary Brouillette?
So that's a perfect segue, Hugh. Thanks for pulling that statement out because it I think encapsulates everything that the president was thinking when he created this working group. If I could just take us one step backward and identify where this started. Back in July of 19, there was what's called a Department of Commerce 232 application filed by some uranium miners because they were saying that nation-state actors were dumping into the U.S. market, dumping uranium, lowering the price to the point where they could no longer produce it here in America. So they filed this application. The president reviewed it. He said, you know what, this is only the tip of the iceberg. This problem is much, much broader than this. He denied the application, but he created this working group to look at the entirety of the industry, very specifically focused on the front end of the nuclear fuel cycle itself, because that's where the most catastrophe has occurred in the marketplace. And what was in his mind then, and is still in his mind now, is that we have lost our leadership in the nuclear space. We've lost our leadership both on the technology side and on the market side. We're losing out to the Russians and the Chinese. And why does that matter? Well, obviously it matters because we were the world leader, not only in the development of nuclear technology, but in the export of this technology around the world. And we've lost that, and it leads to a national defense issue. It leads us to the point where now we have nation states who are pursuing civilian nuclear technology, and they retain the ability potentially to create weapons from that technology, which increases our defense burdens here in the United States.
Well, it is clear that everything that we had done for 45 to 50 years collapsed over the last 10 years. And that entire cycle, which begins with mining, then you produce it, then you enrich it, then you put it into weapons, then you store it, then you build nuclear plant. It's all gone, Mr. Secretary. How do you restart that engine?
Well, you restarted by taking the steps that this roadmap that's been put together by the Nuclear Fuels Working Group leads us to the path of leadership and dominance again in this nuclear space. But to prove your point, I'm looking at some stats here, and I'll just run through them real quick. There's about 100 to 107 new nuclear reactors that are going to be completed around the world by 2030. 43 of those are going to be done by Chinese vendors, 29 by Russia, 10 by India, 9 by South Korea, near zero by the United States. That's alarming. But we have, in fact, lost our leadership in this space. What this working group does, though, is it points us to a direction that leads us back to dominance by focusing on advanced technologies, the small modular reactors that we have talked about in the past, importantly, the advanced reactors that are coming online. It points us to the development of accident-tolerant fuels. It points us to the development of walk-away safe fuels. It points us to market distortions here in the United States that have made nuclear non-competitive because of the structure of the marketplace, not the cost of the product itself.
Let's talk about two of the things you just mentioned. Number one, which my eye caught, was the microreactors. This is a Department of Defense need to to put everywhere and to use everywhere. What's required to get that not just on a piece of paper from the Department of Energy, but actually getting built? Microreactors are the future.
Sure. Two things. We need to develop fuels, which we're doing. We announced a project last year, $115 million pilot project to create high-assay LEU, which we refer to as HALEU. It's a fuel, a specialized fuel that's enriched to about 19.5%. And what that does is allows the density for these microreactors to develop to become smaller. You can create the reactor in a much smaller space if you have a higher density fuel. So we catalyzed that project at the Department of Energy. The second thing we're doing is we're creating a test reactor, versatile test reactor at our Idaho National Laboratory, which will allow us to very quickly identify materials that can be used in these new reactors.
I was in Idaho last year. I was in Idaho for a conference, and they told me about your Idaho lab. I had never known you were doing that. It was a conference unrelated to the fuel cycle. I did not know you were building that up at Idaho. But go back for a second. HALEU, what is that? What's HALEU?
So it's high assay. It's everything in the government has an acronym. So it's HALEU. It's high assay, low enriched uranium. So typical reactor uses enriched uranium at about 3 to 5%, kind of in that neighborhood. And those are the big reactors you see down in Georgia and other places around the country. What we're doing is taking that uranium, that low enriched uranium, and bringing it up to about 19% enrichment. And that creates a higher density fuel that these small reactors need.
How big are the pocket reactors? If people talk about pocket carriers in World War II, I'm thinking of these pocket reactors. How big are they physically? The one you're building in Idaho, for example.
Well, the footprint is very small. So you think about a small modular reactor, is a series of reactors that can be put on a couple of acres of land. So relative to a big 1 gigawatt reactor, that's tiny. But these new reactors are even smaller. I mean, some of these are the size of a pickup truck. And, they're very tiny, but the energy density, the energy output is simply enormous. And that's why the DOD is very interested in this. You can put them in a remote location out in Alaska, for instance.
I would think the third world, the developing world would want them as well if they're safe, Mr. Secretary.
If they're safe and if they're non-proliferant. So if you can't take the fuel and develop a warhead from it. And that's the beautiful thing about these small reactors is that the fuels that we are developing are non-proliferant. You cannot use them to make a warhead.
Now, way in the weeds, I've talked to you before about unobligated enriched uranium. Would you explain that for the Steelers fans who are listening, what that is and what? We got a lot of them, and we love them, but we gotta go slow, Mr. Secretary. Unobligated enriched uranium.
Spoken like a Browns fan, right?
There you go.
So you have obligated and unobligated uses. So if you have obligated and unobligated fuels, what that means is that they're obligated for peaceful use. So you can use the uranium or the fuel or the civilian nuclear technologies for the purposes of developing peaceful civilian electricity, throughout your economy. And everything is designated either obligated to that peaceful use or unobligated. And for things that are unobligated or things that don't have these peaceful use restrictions, those are the dangerous parts of the world that we care about a lot.
And
places like North Korea and other places like that.
Do we need more unobligated enriched uranium?
That's a good policy question.
Because we have to put it into our nuclear reactors on carriers, right? We've got to use it in our weapons. We can't have everything obligated to peaceful use, or we won't be able to protect ourselves.
No, that's right. So it's and that's part of the DOE mission as well. So we develop the reactors for all of the Navy ships that are nuclear powered, so all the aircraft carriers and all the submarines. Everything that's associated with the U.S. Navy has to be U.S. origin technology, from the design of the reactor to the components in the reactor to the fuel that goes into the reactor. Everything has to be U.S. origin. And that's the same thing with our weapons programs as well. So all of the nuclear warheads that we create here at DOE have the same obligation as same requirement.
So, Mr. Secretary, you got into the secret sauce for Hugh Hewitt. If the nuclear Navy, and I'm a civilian, right? But I try and read naval history, and I've got family, et cetera. If the nuclear Navy wants to stay at sea longer and build bigger weapons platforms, they need smaller reactors. They need smaller reactors that use the new highly enriched fuel. They need all of this to make the military of 2050 and 2070 a reality, especially up against the Communist Chinese Party, which I'm sure is investing in the same stuff. Are we ahead of them for defense purposes in what we need for our nuclear Navy and indeed our Space Force?
Yes, we're ahead of them by light years with regard to that sort of technology. So, for instance, the Navy, we talked about enrichment and the various levels of enrichment. The Navy fuels are enriched at a much, much higher level than what we just discussed, the 5 or the 19%. It's much, much higher than that because they need that density to make those submarines go fast and make those ships go fast. It's a very, very powerful machine. But our technologies in those areas are light years ahead of our competitors.
Do we have enough of the fuel? Do we have enough of the capacity? Do we have enough of the new technology to make sure we retain, which has got to be, and this is really the $64,000 question, which the Steelers fans understand, to retain a significant advantage over the CCP of the PCR?
Well, that's part of the effort here with the working group. So what we're creating as part of this group is a uranium reserve, much like we have in the oil business with our strategic petroleum reserve. It provides us with a level of security that we feel strongly the nation needs. So that's the first step, and we've committed $150 million in the president's budget to establish this uranium reserve, and just gives us that extra level of protection in that part of the marketplace.
1 minute left. Are we also doing an enriched reserve? Are we also doing a microtechnology reserve? Do we have these pocket reactors ready to go in the fuel to make them go?
Well, those types of technologies are already protected by federal law, so we don't need to create a reserve per se for the technology itself. There are processes in place that allow us to maintain control over these technologies. For instance, when we sell this type of technology, civilian technology, to a new country or a new company that's looking to do business overseas, it comes with restrictions like Section 123 of the Atomic Energy Act, or Part 810, which is a DOE regulation or DOE component. And we attach restrictions to the technology so that they can't be shared easily or just, stolen in the marketplace. So they're already protected.
Secretary, this is an important report. I want everyone to read it. You can't spend enough money on this. I hope the next phase 4 gives you more money to do this. This is American jobs. This is American technology. We've got to get back in leadership, and you've done a great work here. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Hugh, great being with you.
He also got the Steelers stuff, so I love that. Thank you, Secretary Brouillette. Time for me to tell you, as I do every time at this time, ReliefFactor.com will help you. Every day after the show, I mean literally right after the show, I am out there. Walking, running, not very fast. I'm not fast anymore, but I am persistent. And that's because ReliefFactor.com keeps me in the game. $19.95 gets you in the game. So every day you've got to be out there, even socially distanced, even alone with your spouse, with your kid if you've been in quarantine with them. Get out there. I see lots of dads with kids in strollers. That tells me mom's going nuts at home. And I give them their space. He or she should be using Relief Factor as well. Everyone, every age, but especially as you get older. ReliefFactor.com. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.
French call from
president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
That was Olivia Nuzzi, America, or Nuzzi. I don't know how to say her name. She's with New York Magazine, 29-year-old reporter. I am joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, I think that kind of question, unwittingly, unknowingly, plays right into the hands of the Communist Chinese Party of the PRC by opening up lines of attack on America that have nothing to do with the origin and spread of this virus.
Yeah, Hugh, I wonder what she and other reporters in the media would be saying if you substituted Russia for China. There's a big report in the New York Times just last week that China was using a lot of the same techniques to foment division and panic about this virus that Russia had used in the election in 2016. Yet I didn't see the pundits on CNN and MSNBC setting their hair on fire about China, China, China. If anything, they were apologizing for Chinese behavior.
Now, I have a sign now on my call screen, Senator. It has one statement and two questions. The statement is, in a bow to James Carville, it's the Chinese Communist Party, stupid. And the two questions are free market capitalism or socialism, and Trump's energy and team, or Biden's cluelessness and lethargy. Am I sufficiently prepared for the 6 months ahead?
Those are, I think, all pretty central themes, Hugh, that we're going to see in the campaign ahead. In particular, the fight to come between China and the United States for who will lead the civilized world. This virus originated in China. Some reports suggest that we could have seen anywhere from 65 to 90% fewer cases in China. So imagine what that would mean worldwide, if not for their closed authoritarian communist dictatorship. Joe Biden, regrettably, has been one of the worst politicians on China going back 50 years. Just last year, he said they weren't even a competitor of ours. I don't know many Americans who view it in those terms.
Now, Senator, Phase 4 is coming up. I think it will be the most significant legislative debate probably of your career, and I expect your career to go a long time. I think it's almost Federalist Papers quality debate about what is required of the states, what the federal government does for the states, what strings, if any, are attached. How are you approaching this debate? Leader McConnell kicked it off last week on this show. What Senator Cotton think about the framing of it?
Yeah, I know that his comments got a lot of attention, but I think the only point about aiding states and cities who have been hit so hard by coronavirus is we want to make sure we're using your tax dollars to support response to the virus, whether it's supporting our hospitals, our first responders, or others who have had significant economic harm to their communities because of the virus. We don't want to use your tax dollars in the middle of a pandemic to float bad fiscal practices that existed long before this virus hit. And that's not even a Democratic or Republican divide. There are some states that are Democratic, some that are Republican, that were in pretty bad shape 6 months ago. We just want to make sure that federal tax dollars are supporting a response to the virus. But as you say, it's going to be about a lot more than just state and local aid. For instance, I would like to include my legislation that would help bring pharmaceutical manufacturing back from China and do so as rapidly as possible. So I think you'll see other measures designed to counteract China and also reduce our dependence on China in any future legislation.
I just had Secretary Brouillette on. I think this legislation ought to configure America's nuclear power industry as preeminent and at home and safe from overbearing CCP policies and penetration of foreign markets. Do you think there'll be room in this bill for that?
I hope so. And let's think about nuclear power in two different ways, Hugh. Let's think about its civilian uses and how much we depend on it here, how much more we should depend on it here, and what it means for reliable, stable electricity coming to our homes and businesses. Imagine how much worse this pandemic would have been if a significant part of our country had suffered a foreign-sponsored cyber attack on our electrical grid. But second, let's look at the military dimension of it as well. The fact that our nuclear deterrent is what has kept us safe and prevented major war between great powers for 75 years now, and the urgent need to continue the modernization of our nuclear forces, as well as to recognize the coronavirus has affected our defense industrial base. You don't hear about it as much the way you hear about meat processing plants, for instance, because it's not consumer facing, but there is going to be a pretty significant hole in the military's budget because these factories have had to shut down, just like so many other factories had. those are all urgent priorities.
I hope you feel that. We got a minute left, Senator Cotton. How long and how public will this debate over Phase 4 be?
I don't know, Hugh, in part because I don't know, the course of the last 3 or 4 bills that we've passed will be. One point that Senator McConnell's made, that others have made, is we have a lot of programs that are still just standing up, and we want to see the effect of it. We also, of course, want to see how states that have done a pretty good job of keeping the virus under control and are opening back up do in terms of maintaining that and continuing the forward momentum to getting people back to work, back to their normal routines, and getting the economy back on its feet. But Congress will be in session on May 4th, and I'm of the opinion, as Senator McConnell, that we've got to get our work done just like all those critical workers all around the country.
And I'm of the opinion, if you were early to the bell, as Senator Cotton was, in sounding the alarm on the virus and the CCP, then you ought to be first to speak, and people ought to listen very closely. Senator Cotton will therefore be first in line because he was first to the bell. Senator Cotton, thank you. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by patternsofevidence.com.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to the 400 affiliates listening. And if you're watching on Facebook or my YouTube channel or on Instagram, welcome as well. I have a new guest. Professor Todd Zywicki is a professor of law at the Antonin Scalia School of Law at George Mason University in Virginia. Professor Zywicki is just a genius and a lot of fun and travels the country and is always well received by Federalist Society everywhere. He has two expertise, which I want to draw on this morning in our 10 minutes together. One is nursing homes, and the other is bankruptcy. And I want to start with nursing homes because he has a new piece out in National Review, which I just tweeted out to all of you about what we all kind of know, that there's a nursing home-specific dimension to the virus crisis. And Professor Zywicki, welcome. It's good to have you, Todd. Tell us first about the National Review piece and about this iceberg underneath the statistics about where the virus is hitting the homes.
Great to be with you, Hugh. And this is sort of one of those classic stories of something hiding in plain sight, which is the nursing home problem has been really the heart of this whole issue. And it's not just in the United States. Worldwide, or throughout the Western world, more than half of all deaths from coronavirus-related diseases have been in nursing homes. In the United States, we're finding the same thing. In Minnesota, it's now 3/4 of deaths in Minnesota. And what we're seeing is numerous states are revising this upwards as they're systematically collecting the data. And this is important in three ways, which is first, obviously, it says we should focus more resources on nursing homes. But second, it also says that we've probably vastly overstated the risk of the virus to the general public because we're lumping in nursing home deaths with all the other deaths, and in the way we think about this. And the third thing is it actually helps us to think about how we might protect nursing homes better going forward. But the large point here is that all the things we've done, things that have basically destroyed the economy, have driven up depression, and had all these horrible things, have really done nothing to address the heart of the problem, which is these huge outbreaks in nursing homes, which have an especially vulnerable population and are especially prone to infection outbreaks.
Now, Professor, there are millions of people leaning in right now because one or both of their parents or in-laws or grandparents are living in a nursing home. And there are great nursing homes out there, by the way.
Absolutely.
I mean, terrific, wonderful, and there are terrible ones. So there's a bell curve of nursing facilities and elder care homes and Alzheimer care homes. And there are good ones and there are terrible ones, et cetera. Do we know anything about the distribution of virus deaths according to any other metric by which we rate nursing homes? For example, long-term morbidity ahead of actuarial morbidity, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. And this is one of the problems, Hugh, is that because we have kind of focused our response, the problems in nursing homes, and we've basically focused our response on everything but nursing homes, which is amazing here. It was literally just last week that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Studies announced that they're going to start collecting systematic data on what's going on in nursing homes. In Europe, it's been the same thing. So at this point, we don't really understand what underlies this. What we do understand and do know is that nursing homes were not prepared for this when it first happened. They've ramped up their protections substantially, but it's a very difficult situation, and I think this is one of those things, rather than, for a fraction of the amount of money we're spending on unemployment insurance and trying to keep businesses from filing bankruptcy, we could really, in some sense, almost give a bailout to nursing homes so that they could take more aggressive protocols. They have responded as they've understood the problem, but I don't think we've really got a good handle on the whole scope of the problem, where it comes from, and how to prevent this going forward.
Now, Professor Zywicki, this is I don't want to be mean-spirited. I don't want to be in any way flippant. But a cruise ship is a natural breeder of disease, and people know that because of the close confinement. Are not nursing homes very similar to cruise ship in the health dynamic within them?
Absolutely, and take that in cruise ships have a generally elderly population, but add into that mix the fact that nursing homes also have a relatively vulnerable people tend to be much more health impaired to begin with, and so we need special vigilance in dealing with nursing homes because it's basically the cruise ship on steroids. It's the cruise ship in terms of the tendency for an outbreak, with even one bigger point, which is people come and go from nursing homes, even EMTs, even delivery people. Nursing on cruise ships, you don't have this kind of constant introduction of outside people into the environment, and so it really requires even more vigilance.
Now, aren't most elder care facilities licensed by the state? In other words, cannot the state, this is not a federal government issue, this is a state licensure issue. Ought they not to be upping their vigilance at the state level?
They should be, and my impression is that they are. And one of the things is honestly, I think this just got people by surprise. So, for example, there's often comparisons to influenza. In influenza, there have been serious outbreaks in nursing homes, but one of the things we see with that is pretty much every nursing home makes sure that every resident gets a flu shot every year, which substantially reduces the risk to nursing homes from big influenza outbreaks. They're very sketchy. They're very sporadic on whether or not they give staff require influenza tests. But here, this is a new one, caught them off guard, and in states were obviously behind the state governments were really, and regulators were really behind the curve in catching up to this.
I know you're not a doctor. I know you didn't stay at a Holiday Inn. You're a lawyer. Ought people be trying to get their parents out of nursing homes, or do you even have any statistical evidence that that is what is underway?
We know that what we know is that the population is starting to decline. I think what we're seeing is that people are not putting their parents in nursing homes. We also see nursing homes also had a lot of transitory population. Maybe somebody would come in for 2 weeks or a month after they had hip replacement surgery. So those people are not moving in because a lot of those surgery protocols have been postponed. So obviously people want to be careful about that. In a lot of people who are in nursing homes, unfortunately, because they are such a vulnerable population, it's hard to bring them home. It's hard to take care of somebody like that, and there's a reason why they are in one of these professional care facilities to begin with. But I think that one of the things we could be thinking about would be how do we separate nursing home populations better? How do we take the ones maybe who are less unhealthy, move them into apartments, for example, where they could be supported, something like that would then allow more space for those who are genuinely need more supervision. A lot of more aggressive things that I think might be worth some investments. That right now nursing homes, a lot of them are on the verge of bankruptcy simply because of the increased protocols they've had to take.
Now, Professor, I want to switch and give you 2 minutes. A primer. What is the debate about when we talk about a new chapter in the bankruptcy code for states? Just frame it, and we'll be back to this for months. You have the floor for 2 minutes. What's the framing of the issue?
Well, here's the way I think of it, Hugh, which is in the ideal world, these reckless states who have overspent that you've been documenting for a long time, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, they would get their fiscal house in order. They would actually live within their means. I don't think there's any evidence that that's going to happen. And so my view on this is that state bankruptcy is probably the least bad solution to dealing with these states, which is the alternative would essentially be an ad hoc, rolling, just political feeding frenzy, where the alternative would be states could pick and choose what debts they wanted to pay or default on. I think we know how that ends, which is the politically most powerful group is really public employee unions, who are one of the big reasons we're in this situation to begin with, is because of the lavish pension plans and the like. They will largely emerge unscathed. I think bankruptcy at least puts this in a system where there's a rule of law, where there's some rules, and might actually bring about a long-term remedy to these state financial problems without a lot of disruption to everyday life or interruption of services.
Professor Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, suggested that even the passage of such a statute would rattle markets. We have less than a minute. Is he right? Would that cause bonds to plummet in value if even the whisper of an authority that is optional became law?
I don't think so. What we see is that a lot of these bonds are already, like Illinois, they're basically already treated like junk bonds. And if anything, I think that the passage of this would basically allow bondholders to have some assurance that they'll get something, that there'll be some protection of them in bankruptcy. So I think that's just an overstated concern personally.
I hope you will keep coming back, Professor. I have sent your National Review article, which ought to be mandatory reading for anyone who has a parent or a grandparent in a nursing facility, for the professionals who run them, for the people who live in them and read and watch news. They want to read Todd Zywicki, and then they want to talk to the team that's taking care of them about being on guard. I'll be right back, America. Thank you, Professor Todd Zywicki from George Mason University's Eugene's Antonin Scalia School of Law. I just promoted the Secretary of Labor there. It's the Justice Scalia School of Law. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. 22 minutes after the hour, America, I will wager that Senator Rick Scott of the great state of Florida wishes he was back in the governor's office. And I will talk to him about that next segment, so do not miss that. He's coming up at the bottom of the hour. Right now, I want to look at markets brought to you by Andrew and Todd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Zywicki. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. As I told you, I spent a couple hours talking to Andrew on Sunday, making sure that I could say what I'm about to say. There have never been mortgage rates this good. They were this good in early March and late February. They are back there. And so if you need to refinance, I mean, you need to. You can't just do looky-loo stuff. People really need to get the money out of their house right now. They really need to save a few $100 a month. Some of them want to buy an investment property. They made some money. They had it in the bank, or they want to do something that is more stable than, and very few things are more stable than a rental unit. They just want to diversify. They can call Andrew Del Rey and Todd Zywicki at 888-888-1172. They are lenders with Sierra Pacific. That's a direct lender, right? That's not a broker. They're not selling your leads. I had a long talk with Andrew. I didn't realize that a lot of these companies that say, hey, you want to check your rate? And you go and you put in your information. They sell those leads. They will never, ever sell your information to anybody. AndrewandTodd.com. And I know them. I know them well. I've known Andrew for 20-plus years. He's been in a Bible study with me. I've known Todd Zywicki for 7 years now. These guys will never, ever abuse your personal information. It stays with them. AndrewandTodd.com. Look, see, the 10-year Treasury is at a remarkable level, which I'm trying to look, 0.66%. So that's not the interest rate that you'll get. Right? That's not what you'll get, but it's the interest rate on which all loans are based. It's remarkably low. It's never been better time to refinance your home and save money. And they will be financial counselors to you. Andrew explained, if you're going to save $700 a month, they suggest you put $350 a month back into the principal payment every month and shave 7-8 years off the loan. So they'll talk you through all the options, but don't clog the line. They're people who need their help. AndrewandTodd.com. Yesterday, the Dow was up 358 points. The NASDAQ almost 100. The S&P 41. This morning, it keeps getting better in England and Germany. They're both closing in on 1.75% growth. I'm not the prophet nor the son of the prophet, but I'll bet today's another great day on the market. About the only stock of any consequence that everyone knows that went down yesterday was Amazon, because some people are taking profits before what are expected to be blowout earnings are announced on Thursday night. They might be back in the market. Amazon's going to be funny for a couple of days, but the whole world is changing. But your house is your house. Make sure it's financed at the right level. I want to go back and play for you Olivia Nuzzi or Nuzzi. I don't know how you say her name. Abusing her press access yesterday to ask an obvious hatchet job political question, cut number, whatever it is.
If an American president loses more Americans over the course of 6 weeks than died in the entirety of the Vietnam War, does he deserve to be reelected?
All right, stop right there. That's why the president just tweeted. We are doing far more and better testing than any other country in the world, writes the president 19 minutes ago. And yet, the media does nothing but complain. No matter how good a job is done, the same as with the ventilators, they will never say we are doing a great job. They will only viciously gripe. He's right. But what Olivia Nuzzi did wasn't griping. That was pure political activism, bereft of any knowledge of proximate cause. Actually, 100% wrong. Embedded within her question is ignorance of basic laws of causation. It is premised that the president is, the premise of the question is that the president of the United States is responsible for the people who are dead as a result of COVID. And this is a lot of suffering. This is 56,000 people dead, probably the same number seriously ill with long-term complications. And it's the Chinese Communist Party, Olivia. Read a book. Read a book. Don't write one. I have no interest in what you have to tell me at 29 years of age, Anthony Weiner staffer. Read a book. Start with The 100 Years' War by Michael Pillsbury. Maybe Kissinger on China. Read a book. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'll be right back with Rick Scott. 33 minutes after the hour, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back to today's Tuesday show with 56,000 Americans dead and more than 1 million infected. I'm pleased to welcome back Senator Rick Scott of the great state of Florida. Senator Scott, good to have you back.
It's great to be back, Hugh. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm wondering if you wish you were back in the governor's office or because you'd be in charge of Florida's response, or whether or not it's time you're enjoying being in the battle in the Senate.
You know, it's a great job to be the governor because you are responsible for things day to day, and you get them done. And there's always things you'd like to do, but this is a great job being a U.S. senator because you can help direct national policy and foreign policy. So it's a different job, but I'm gonna do everything I can to help people get more testing out there, get plans to reopen our businesses. I have a plan out there I put out there a little over a week ago. What do we all have to do? The federal government, the state government, the local government, the private business, the individuals, so we can work a plan.
So, Senator, you have arrived in the Senate on the eve of what will be one of the most significant legislative debates, I believe, since we actually set up the government, because it's going to involve structural federalism. What does the federal government do vis-a-vis the states? And you are a great federalist because you're the governor. Your time as a governor taught you that the federal government is never here to help you, usually. But now you might be there to get help. You might need help because of fiscal decisions that were taken 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and a virus which arrived 30 days ago. What is your point of view going into this very important legislative debate about Phase 4?
Well, Hugh, I think it's important that we help the states with their cost of coronavirus. It's no different than what happens with a hurricane. We've already done that. We've sent money to the states, and we've said we're going to help you with your coronavirus costs. And I think that's the right thing to do. We also sent money to the states to say we're going to help you with your increased Medicaid costs. And I think that's appropriate. But what I'm not interested in doing is bailing out pension plans from these liberal states that don't want to live within their budget. I was the governor. I had to balance the budget. I had to deal with the pension plan. I had to deal with all those things. I watched New York with fewer people than Florida. I think we have 2 or 3 million more people than Florida, than New York, and their budget was almost double ours. And now all these liberal states want the federal government to bail them out. So somebody moved from New York to get away from those high taxes, moved to Sarasota, and then now these liberal governors say, now I want those people to move to the states that balance their budgets and pay for our bad budgets.
Now, Senator, you spent 8 years in the National Association of Governors, and at the same time, Andrew Cuomo was there because he's been there for 12 or 13 or 14 or maybe 100 years. I don't know. Andrew Cuomo's a good governor. People like him. He's doing a good job. But he got all mad at your leader and said it was outrageous, made it a personal attack. Maybe that's a New York thing, right? We've seen that in other places. So what do you make of Andrew Cuomo's volcanic rejection of the idea that maybe the states ought to have as an option bankruptcy authority?
Well, first off, I didn't join the National Governors Association because it was $300,000 to the state, and I didn't see any value out of it. So
interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, so I didn't see any value out of it, so I didn't join it.
Have you ever met Andrew Cuomo?
Nope, never met him. No, I've never met him. I talked to him once on the phone, but that's it. Here's the way I look at it: we've got to help these states that have had these horrible budgets, haven't balanced them, figure out how to deal with their pension plans. However you do it, you've got to figure out how they can restructure their debts, because there's no way that their taxpayers are willing to pay for this. They're not going to pay for it. They're not. You can't run on raising taxes and then. So I mean, these states have their pension plans are not even close to being funded, and they will never be funded like Illinois and New Jersey and California.
But what about the problem, Senator? I'm going to put on my Gavin Newsom hat because I lived in California for a long time. I'm a Virginian now, but I lived there for a long time, and he's doing a good job with the virus. But it's easy to shut down an economy. It's very hard to reopen it. They have I think a marginal income tax rate of 13.5%. They have a very high sales tax. They have a capital gains tax. They're going to get crushed because they depend upon tax revenues which are not going to arrive. Do you consider that to be a virus-related responsibility of the federal government, the loss of income tax, capital gains tax, sales tax, user tax fees?
No. Why? I mean, let's look at the federal budget. I mean, we're going to run at least a $3 trillion budget deficit this year. The federal government, we're going to end the year with probably $26 or $27 trillion worth of debt this year. So $3 trillion budget deficit, $26, $27 trillion worth of debt. I mean, so which taxpayers are going to pay for it? The states should live within their means and figure this out.
Well, this
we're
is reminiscent.
For coronavirus cost.
Governor, Senator, Governor, I can call you both. I call Mitt Romney Governor. I always call governors governor forever, and Chuck Todd once famously told me that he's never met a governor who became a senator who wanted to be known as other than governor. So it's kind of funny. As we look at this, here's the problem. I got to ask Governor Romney about this too. If we do a jam down of reform, that violates basic federalism principle. Our country is built on the states being allowed to be irresponsible if they want. And now there is a meteor strike on their finances. So I can hear my blue state listeners saying, you've got to help us. This is a hurricane.
Well, first off, we are helping them with their cost. We're helping them with their coronavirus costs. We're helping them with their Medicaid. Hey, I walked in with almost, I think it was a $4 billion budget deficit. I walked in at the end of the financial crisis. We had 1 million homes in foreclosure. We had lost 800,000 jobs. And what I did, I had to balance the budget. I had to allocate the dollars the way I could. I started cutting taxes because I knew reducing taxes, reducing regulation, streamlining permitting, I would get more jobs back. And guess what? We added 1.7 million jobs. Unemployment went from 11% to 3.3%. I paid off a third of the state debt. We made pension reforms. Those are all hard. I mean, but you have to do it. It's hard to be a governor.
But Governor Cuomo argues, and I don't know if this is true or not, you're asking me to fire nurses and police officers, firemen and first responders, and to shutter hospitals that are needed. You're asking us to cut the heart out of the barely beating heart of our state. What's your response?
Absolutely not. I mean, let's look at it. First off, we have $175 billion in for our healthcare industry. We have put in, CBO, I think, said it's another $50 billion into the Medicaid program. We put in money to cover all the coronavirus costs, right? So we've actually put significant dollars into our states. I want to do that, but you've got to figure out as a governor how to allocate your dollars. And you look at why is New York's budget almost double Florida's when we have 2 or 3 million more people? Why is that? Why can't they figure out how to fix their pension plan?
Now, he also said they are net givers and that Kentucky and other places are net takers. What do you make? I think that argument is completely nonsense because every federal citizen pays according to the same rules, their federal share, and states decide how much to take from their states. But he nevertheless says we pay this much in and we get this much back, and we're not a net taker.
No. Don't believe any of that. That's what they all want to say. If you look at the amount of dollars, just take Medicaid, just the basic Medicaid without the expansion, and you look at how much New York gets versus Florida, it's dramatically more. Their cost, they get almost double per person under Medicaid out of the federal government than what Florida gets.
Well, I'd love to see a debate between you and Governor Cuomo, because President Trump hadn't been a governor. And so I would love to see a governor go head-to-head with him on this. Here is the key question. I firmly believe that bankruptcy authority, not mandatory, but an option, be available to the states. Because I lived in Orange County, and we had to go through, at that point, the largest local government bankruptcy ever. And it was unpleasant, but it wasn't a disaster. It was a useful tool, as it is proven for Detroit. What do you think about a new chapter in the bankruptcy code, not mandatory, for states that have to give everybody a haircut?
I think they ought to have a way to do. They've got to have a way to restructure the debts that they know they're never going to be able to pay. It's unfair what they've done. It's unfair what they've told. They've told people in their states that here you're going to get a pension. Oh gosh, but we're not going to fund it. But you're going to get it. Don't worry, you're going to get it. But I don't know how these people think that how this is fair to the people who rely on these pensions. I had to make tough choices. It's hard, but you've got to do it. If you're going to tell people you're going to get a pension, fund it. It's their obligation to fund it.
What about the people who bought? What about people in California who bought $10 billion worth of bonds for a high-speed train that will never be built. They've already spent $6 billion. A lot of that's federal money, some states' money. But they borrowed $10 billion. They authorized $10 billion in bonds for a train from nowhere to nowhere. No insult intended, Merced. But it's just never going to get built. Those bonds, they're just worthless. They're just worthless bonds.
Yeah, I mean, you're an investor. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible that you rely on these governments. I mean, I killed the high-speed rail project because I knew it didn't make any sense. They were going to give us $2.6 billion when I became governor. We're going to build a high-speed train that goes 84 miles, stop 15 times, lose $100 million a year, and spend at least $1 billion to $3 billion of the state funds. I said, no way.
Where was it going to go from, too?
Yes.
Whose magic dream was that? Where was that unicorn going to start and end?
Oh, that was Obama. They were furious with me. They're furious with me because I stopped it. But and there were a lot of people that they just wanted to spend the money. But I said, this doesn't make sense.
What's it going to go from Miami to Tampa? Where was it across?
Tampa to Orlando. It was going Tampa to Orlando.
Yeah, there's a pretty good highway up there. That's a pretty good highway from Tampa.
Highway. And so I had to do. Did I make everybody happy when you make the tough choices? No, but as a governor, that's your job. You got to say, look, these are nice to have. So we'd love to do all these things, but I have to raise your taxes to do this. And how is it fair to the people relying on those pension plans that these legislatures and governors don't fund them? How's that fair to the people relying on them?
Oh, it's not. I always think about the Detroit cop who's retired and spent 30 years on the beat or in the car. And when Detroit went bankrupt, he or she took a 30% haircut or a 40% haircut. And that just wasn't fair. But that's Detroit, right?
But that's what these states are doing. They're telling people they have a pension, but not really. They just don't put up the money.
I think you have a unique role in the coming debate, along with Governor Senator Romney. Anyone who's been a governor knows what we're talking about here. Andrew Cuomo is spinning a sailor's story, a fish story, a fisherman's story. And people like Rick Scott are going to set him straight. Senator, thank you. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now it's time for me to tell you about this. You're looking at ReliefFactor.com. This is going to be one of the most significant legislative debates in the history of America. And there are people like Rick Scott, you're not going to be able to blow smoke past them. You're just not. You're not. Andrew Cuomo is very good on TV. I think he's doing a good job leading. Gavin Newsom's very good on TV, doing a good job leading. But they're hiding from you the ball. They're hiding. And they're not going to be hide much longer. I'm not hiding Relief Factor. I tell you about it 3 times a day. I take it in the first hour. I tell you about it 2 more times. It works. Like carrying curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. It's support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pain. It's not a miracle cure. It is a supplement, the only one I take, and you ought to be taking it. Join the tens of thousands of people take it every morning like me. Feel better. Also remember honorboundcoffee.com. Brought to you by the same people who started ReliefFactor.com. Honorbound Coffee is different. 100% of the profits from the best coffee in America. HonorboundCoffee.com, delivered to your door by your order. Honorbound Coffee, 100% of the profits, support military families. Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund. Wise on military bases everywhere. You can trust Pete and Seth Talbot. What about higher ed? We've done nursing home. We've done states. Higher ed is next with Pete Peterson from Pepperdine. Stay tuned. Okay. I can hear myself. Can you see me? Can you see me? Okay, so if I do this on James, that's better than the camera? So then Ben can flip back and forth? Excellent, excellent, excellent. That's what we'll do. You'll call me at 6 p.m. Ben.
Now,
3 p.m. tonight. And I sent you a list of pictures. I'm all. Welcome back, America. The virus is changing American society and world society in profound ways. One sector that has not yet gotten a lot of attention is higher ed. Pete Peterson is Dean of the Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, frequent guest, longtime friend. He joins me this morning from California. Good morning, Pete Peterson. Welcome back.
Good morning, Hugh. Great to be back with you.
I am just looking for people like you to give us some idea of what the virus has done, upending the lives of your graduate students, and what you are planning this summer and fall at Pepperdine, both in the Graduate School of Public Policy and college-wide, university-wide, to deal with this.
Well, the phrase that's been going around, and we've spent a lot of time on it, is scenario planning, Hugh. Obviously, we had to transition immediately from on-ground classes to online at the School of Public Policy. And while we just had commencement, it was an online ceremony that we postponed the actual on-ground ceremony for some time in the future. We're not sure exactly when. But we had to transition immediately classes from on-ground to online for the last third of the semester. As we look at the summer, we have classes that we had planned to offer in D.C. We're transitioning one of those sessions in June to online. We're still hoping to be on ground in July, but we'll have to see. And then, of course, as we look toward the fall, we're planning for all scenarios. We'll be ready to go if we need to be online. If we can be on ground and start there, we'll be ready for that and then transition later. But there are a lot of moving parts here, from where our students are coming from, our international students, to size of gathering that we'll have and whether this will be a state order or a county order, social distancing rules, what they will look like in the fall. So a lot of different spinning plates here that we're planning for in the fall.
Now, Dean Peterson, one of the things that happened in the Great Recession of 2008 is that I recommended to a lot of young people, there aren't a lot of jobs right now, and it's going to be a while. Go get a degree. I mean, you've got an opportunity now to go burrow in, maybe go to law school, maybe go to the Graduate School of Public Policy, go get a degree. What do you think of my advice for right now?
Well, I hope folks are hearing you. I think some people must. We've seen a real surge in inquiries and applications, Hugh, just in the last month, and I hate to point to that as a silver lining, but certainly with graduate schools and any time of financial uncertainty or turbulence, prospective students will think differently about whether to applying to graduate school or not. But that certainly has been the case with us. I mean, obviously, in so many ways, this pandemic is a public policy crisis, whether we're talking about international relations or what states are doing or what local governments are doing. The pandemic is affecting all levels of governance, and we've certainly seen a surge in applications, as I said, here to the policy school. I think it's like a post 9/11 moment, a time that really changed my own career trajectory, taking me from the private sector into the policy sector, and I think we're seeing that era repeat itself in maybe some larger ways now.
Yeah, when the economy contracts, my underlying advice is invest in yourself. If you can't go out and make money, the opportunity cost will be doubled unless you invest in yourself, in which case you can cut that opportunity cost down dramatically, and you may even reverse it if you make a wise investment in yourself. Do you agree with that thinking, Pete Peterson?
I do, Hugh, and again, that point about opportunity costs and the opportunity here to invest in yourself for a world that's going to look a lot different, especially in our policy and politics. I know that you're so good about covering that on a daily basis, but our post-COVID-19 policy world is going to look a lot different than the current one. A lot more opportunities for people at all levels of governance, and certainly in the nonprofit sector as well. And those are the kinds of cross-sector leaders that we're preparing at the policy school.
You're touching on a fundamental thing, which is the crisis is so immediate, the death toll is so high. People are not yet clearly comprehending how fundamental it changed. They did it after 9/11 because it was so horrific. They did during the Great Recession because everyone was out of work. And that was a financial crisis, though. It wasn't really an event. I think this is what did they used to call it, a paradigm shift before it became a cliche, but we're back to, it's really a paradigm shift on everything. Last minute to you, Pete Peterson.
No, I couldn't agree more. And again, it's striking at all levels of governance. I mean, if we see what's happening in state governments and how they're reacting differently with different policy prescriptions, when we see what's happening in local governments, and I'm afraid to say, Hugh, we're going to see significant pressure on budgets in municipal governments around the country, not just out here in California. And certainly when you look at international relations, I think it's going to demand a new set of public leaders who are going to think differently about supply chains and our relationships with the rest of the world, particularly Asia.
100% agree. Pete Peterson, always a pleasure to talk to you, Dean. Follow him on Twitter at Pete, the number 4CA, Pete for CA. Follow me to Tomorrow America. There is a huge set of, look, the grief is enormous. The dislocation is immense. The hardship is enduring and broad. But I'll cover it every day, and I'll keep our eye on the future. It's America. We'll bounce back, and I'll tell you every day how we're doing that. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. Talk to you tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by No Safe Spaces.